Hello, everyone. I'm Patricia Shampton with Texas Exes, and thank you for tuning in today to the Lunchtime Lecture. In preparation for what is sure to be an eventful football season in the Southeastern Conference, we're really excited to welcome Professor James Dalthorpe from the Moody College of Communication to discuss the many recent changes in the NCAA and what they mean for the future of Texas athletics. In Dalthorpe's long career in advertising and film production, he has been recognized as an award-winning director, writer, and producer. From the beginning of his career at Propaganda Films in Hollywood, to working as a creative consultant for brands and political campaigns, to now producing and directing a documentary for the USA Basketball and the NBA, Dalthorpe has a broad expertise. He is also a Longhorn himself and graduating from the University of Texas at Austin and returning as a lecturing professional in sports communications. Please help me welcome James Dalthorpe.
Hello. Thanks. Thank you, Patricia. Really appreciate it. And I just want to let everybody know who's on this call how wonderful working with the Texas Exes has been. It's just really been fantastic. Roxanne, who's the coordinator, has been really amazing. So it really makes a difference when someone reaches out and they're so amazingly professional and just collaborate. It really makes my job so much easier. So I'll get started. What I'd like to talk about today is really what I'm sure a lot of you as former Longhorns are about to experience, is the remarkable change that is actually starting here on campus. Tomorrow, I believe our soccer team has our first official game of the 2024 season over at the soccer field. And we're already, this is here. That we're not talking about it in theory. It is happening. And so obviously it's taken a while to get here, but I think it will be potentially the most, the changes that we're about to experience are going to be remarkable. And I think that's the big factor that I think everyone is trying to understand. And it's not easy to do, is how do we stay on top of things? How do we maintain our position as, number one? How do we maintain a position that resolves the confluence of, putting the best possible football program on the field or whatever sport it may be, but also maintaining, the integrity of our academic institution at Texas, and managing this, incredible change that we've just gone through in the last, not just this year as we've had conference realignment, but also moved into the NIL situation. Players are really professionals at this point. There's no such thing as an amateur athlete. And how do we manage all those things, and whose job is what? And honestly, when there are no rules and when there's a vacuum in place, I think you do see a lot of parasites that can sort of emerge, and you can also see a lot of really smart, talented people that will come forward. So, you're going to see it all over the country. You're going to see, in the next 2 years, you're going to read in the Wall Street Journal about some charlatan that just, built Boston College out of $2.5 million at their athletic fund in some capacity. And so, whenever there's opportunity, you're going to see a lot of things happening. And our hope is, and I think at the University of Texas, we have and always will be, I think, stand for, the highest standard morally and ethically imaginable. And, that's what I believe we'll see going forward. So for me, it's been really fun to be back at school. I was an art student here. And, really, I came to Texas because of it didn't hurt that we're right in the middle of a pretty nice winning streak with Coach Royal, but they had a fabulous instruction in the art school. Every professor that I ever had as a photography teacher, or anybody over in RTF, or anybody my painting instructor, was incredibly, wonderful. I had wonderful mentors in the art school, and I never imagined that I'd end up down the path that I ended up. And frankly, being from Texas has opened a lot of doors, and a lot of friendships and relationships that were developed for me personally came from my time here in Austin. So I'll be eternally grateful and, really, humbled to be back at school here, working with students and trying to help them, grow and experience, what the possibility and the opportunities can be. And they've got me, they sort of, like anything else, you want to pigeonhole people. I'm sort of the sports guy, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. But honestly, it kind of makes sense because I've had so much experience in so many different parts of the sports world, from producing stuff for, CBS or the Masters or other places, and docs and, films and stuff with Anyway, it makes a lot of sense. And, honestly, I'll walk into my classes and I'll say, look, there's not a question you can ask me any question you want. I'm probably will be able to answer it for you pretty quickly. So anyway, but I think this opening slide in some respects to me sort of signifies sort of the change that we've seen, I think, and probably as Texas Exes, you've probably seen where, in the center, the days of Coach Royal and James Street and, President Johnson, that era has now, I'll show that photograph in the first day of my class, and I'd say 78% of the students have no idea who any of those people are. So just so we're clear, how far, that was 1970 at the Cotton Bowl after we beat Notre Dame. That's a long time ago. And today, the excitement on campus comes from, when Travis Scott showed up at spring practice with a big collab with Cactus Jack, and people were lined up for 6 hours to, get merch as part of this big, Travis was going all over the country, LSU, Texas, USC. That's where things have gone now. We're starting, everything is being merchandised, everything is being marketed, everything's being sold, and the partnerships that are existing, are sort of raising the bar for everybody. And so the one thing that I think we all know and we can all say is, we're going to be in every discussion. The blessing and the curse probably is that anytime anybody's talking about athletics and what's happening in the marketplace, we're going to be a part of that discussion. No one is going to leave Texas out of, who's setting the bar, who's doing what, who is in, making different changes in a right way to stay in front of everyone else. And Texas is always going to be, at least, what are they doing? Everyone wants to know, what's Texas doing? And I think that probably comes from back in the days when we, after the Vince Young victory over, when we beat USC in the Rose Bowl in 06. I mean, that's still anytime I'm in a bad mood, just put that fourth quarter in and my entire mood will change. So it's that, getting the Longhorn Network that came out of it, and kind of knowing why that was really never going to work, because there's no content. They had no budget and no content. And ultimately, where we've ended up with the Longhorn Network being collapsed into an app or online, which actually is better than it's ever been before, I think, in my humble opinion. But we're also in this world of, on the right, you see Maddie Skinner, who, two-time national champion and part of, the transfer pool, actually three-time national champion with two different schools. So when's the last time you saw, those sorts of things happening, where you've got athletes that are going to leave a successful program for another successful program? And, we're seeing that happen, right this minute. One of the students I had in my spring class, Isaiah Bond, the kid who would probably never have to buy a single meal in Tuscaloosa for the rest of his life after that great catch he made against Auburn, is suddenly, catching passes from Arch and Quinn here in Austin. So, those are the kinds of things that you would never have anticipated. And, certainly, in every sport. So I think it's really kind of a remarkable, exciting time to be here in Austin and be a part of it. And, for me personally, I really enjoy being back in school. Like I tell some of the other folks around here in the School of Communications here at Moody, I know where everything is. That the good news is the worst fear when you're a freshman is not figuring out where your class is or where so-and-so is or where this is. And I know where everything is. There's been a lot of, buildings are being torn down. And when you guys come in this fall, you'll see, on University, the building that parking lot right in front of the Kappa House, gone. They're tearing stuff down like crazy. We've got a new graduate hotel going in on MLK and Guadalupe. There's a lot going on here. And, I think when you see, things coming down, there's money in place and people are excited about the future. So that's, I think, visually something you can't miss. But it's going to be a big darn deal. This conference realignment, we were, many people may historically look back and say, Texas and Oklahoma, those are the two villains in this whole thing. And certainly if you went to Stanford, I have a lot of friends from Stanford, and they are just despondent about what has happened at Stanford and Cal, where they got left out. It's hard to believe that those two schools got left, with nowhere to go. And so you've seen a lot of, these things happen. If you're not leading the trail or blazing the trail, there's potential for those things to happen. So again, this realignment is extraordinary, obviously dictated by the money in place that the SEC can offer, that the Big Ten can offer. We are looking at unprecedented changes in the marketplace. I think what a lot of people are also asking about as I would suspect as a alum is, what about NIL? What is it? How does it work? And how, and again, what I've seen, and I've been here from the beginning when, we started in 2020, when I first got here, not 2019, we didn't have full NIL, but there was, sort of a rumbling in the closet. There was something, you knew that something was happening, and you could start to sense that some of the collectives were starting to emerge as ways to distribute money. And ultimately, we ended up with what we have now, the Texas One Fund, which has been replicated on every campus from Rice to anywhere in the country. Somebody has their version of a fund where you as an alum or anyone interested in supporting athletes at Texas can stroke a check and they'll say, thank you very much. And then we'll let you know where it's going to go. So it went from sort of this, where there was a sense that it might be a direct payment to where now it's like, we don't know. Thank you for your money. You can come to a banquet. You get some privilege with that money, but we're going to be in charge of, we're the bank. And so I think, how that gets resolved and where those things go is still, I think there's, it's like if any business that you work in or anywhere you ever work, no one walks around and says, hey, I'm getting paid X amount of money, knowing that your coworker across the hallways may be making a fraction of what you're making. If you want to create, an unhealthy work environment, start telling people what you're bringing home every week. So I think we're in a situation like that. I have a number of students that are, high profile football players. And I've had a number of terrific students that are in my classes that are, playing on women's tennis team and the volleyball team and softball and basketball. And, they're not getting anything. And, we're seeing, there's still a wide discrepancy and where the money's going. But look at, it's all about, that side of things where, what does it take to bring in the next class? And it takes money and prestige, and it takes everything to attract the kind of recruiting class that you need to sustain the expectations that we have here at Texas. I mean, our expectations are to win in every sport. I mean, that's pretty clear. And, we're not just a football school. I used to say when I was a student here, it was what Texas is there's two sports in Texas. I know you guys have all heard this. There's two sports in Texas. There's football and spring football. And I know when I was in high school, I wanted to play baseball. I liked baseball, but I really liked football. I didn't want to have to go through spring training. So you'd have 100 kids try out for the baseball team to get out of, that middle of the spring heat and just merciless beating each other's head into the ground. in spring football. So that's no longer the case, but look, you have to follow the money, just like business and entertainment. Where's the money? The money's in football. We know that. Football we have basically two rev sports here at Texas, football and basketball. Baseball, your hope is you break even. With hiring Schloss out of, plucking him out of A&M, which couldn't have been a, more wonderful thing, I think, for us. Not so good for the Aggies. Probably, I don't think they're too happy about that, but you could see that one coming a mile away with his relationship with CDC. So anyway, that's our expectation. At the same time, the big change that I've seen between when I was a student here and today is it wasn't as hard to get into the University of Texas when I was a student here. It wasn't easy, but it wasn't, you have to basically, be valedictorian and, your backup school is Yale or Harvard. That was, and so the school is still building an academic reputation that the hope is that we will be the Cal Berkeley. That's we look in the mirror and we see Cal Berkeley. We see those kinds of Stanford. We see schools like that. Those are the students that we're competing for academically and athletically. We're getting kids that would have gone to Alabama or Georgia, or USC or Ohio State. And we're in the hunt for all of those, the top 5 talent that you would never seen leave Texas, or before, or kids that are coming in from IMG in Florida or from Southern California or different places. So it is a wild, wild ride that we're in the middle of. And, you're about to experience it here this fall. I mean, I don't know if anyone's looked at the ticket prices for the Texas-Georgia game recently on StubHub, but I think you could have gone to the Super Bowl for the last 3 years cheaper than a ticket to the game against Georgia is in October. And think about how exciting that is. I mean, we've got Florida, Georgia, I think Mississippi State's coming in here. We're going to Arkansas. We've renewed that rivalry. And of course, we've got, we're going to College Station over Thanksgiving again, which is fantastic. But, with the new conference realignment also has come the advent of on-campus playoff games as well. So, I mean, not just the realignment, but the sweeping changes in the actual way things are going to work. We're going to now start to see on-campus December playoff games. I mean, imagine the anarchy that's going to take place when those things hit campuses. So it's going to be a student that may have played 11 football games or 12 football games 10 years ago is now going to potentially play 16 or 17 games, and the college football playoffs are going to go all the way through January. It's going to be like the Super Bowl. So it's going to be timing wise, a full-time job for those kids. So anyway, for me here, my career, when they brought me in here, they kind of said, look, we were looking for some folks that have more experience and are not lifetime educators. I said, well, that's good because I'm not, but also we want individuals that can help provide, some practical, day-to-day, pass on some experiences that can translate to careers, not only just if you're an athlete, what to do and what not to do is and how to present your brand, but also if you want to work in the sports industry, you want to work in marketing or advertising, what are the, best practices? What can I do to enhance my opportunities there? What are some of the things that we could bring to the kids that here at Texas? And so for me, that's, I'm happy that I'm able to provide some of that. But, I've also honestly seen a lot of remarkable change just in the short time that I've been here. I have 2 big classes that they started me with. Integrated communication for sports, which is sort of a broad reaching class that deals with sort of brings in sports and marketing. And I talk a lot about, the genius and brilliance of Nike and the agency in Portland that created all that work, Wyden and Kennedy. and also talk about how the entertainment business and how athletes have become, sort of many ways replaced actors as viable spokespersons in the marketplace. And so I give them a lot of history, but I also talk about how politics, sports, entertainment are all now this giant, inseparable bundle. And so, look at just this last spring or fall, we had, all anybody could talk about in social was Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift and all these other things. It's like all these things make so much more sense. I mean, look at, the role of all these individuals and who are our heroes, who are the people we look up to. And I think these days, fewer and fewer is it, of a political figure that you admire and respect. It is more, typically an athlete, and less an actor in certain cases. So, but they're all the same. I mean, we have experienced, I think, a lot of smart athletes that realize, hey, my window of opportunity is going to be short-lived. I've had some really great kids that have come through the class, my sports and social media class, like Bijan Robinson. And I'll tell students this fall, Bijan had 100% attendance rate in that class. He knew exactly, we knew he had the talent to play in the NFL, but there was still a lot of, uncertainty. Is he going to get injured? Is his career going to be abruptly put to an end? The average lifespan of an NFL player is, I think, what, 3.5 years? So if you think about that, you've been playing a sport, perfecting your craft your entire life, essentially, and then it's going to be over before you're 26 years old. So what's next? And I think Bijan has been really good about that. He saw the example that, again, that the Acho brothers brought from the University of Texas, and their, the success that they're having in the marketplace. Both of those guys are awesome. So you're seeing this network of Longhorns in the, athletes that have left the school and have found, home in the sports entertainment community. So it's a great place to be. And I think we're leveraging that as a university. When you walk in and you're a 5-star can't miss wide receiver from, wherever, Ohio, you're going to walk in and we're going to tell our story here. And it's an impressive one. So, we are also blessed by the fact that we've got this remarkable, brand identity. I think I think we all know that the Cowboy Star is the most recognizable logo in sports. You can go to anywhere in the world and they know what that star means. And I think we just saw yesterday, the evaluation for the Cowboys just hit $10.2 billion. I think Forbes had them a year ago at 8.6. So billion, not million. So you realize, what we're talking about here, a kind of business that is pretty remarkable. But, we're again, this is Texas. That Bevo silhouette is as recognizable as the New York Yankee logo and a lot of other marks. So we're in a really great place. And, I think, moving forward, our mission is to, stay on top. And that's, we know as we've already moved into the SEC, there's already sort of a lot of people like, we're a shadow. That's, we're entering the best conference in sports and all sports. Suddenly people are like, uh-oh, we got Texas coming in here and Oklahoma, our little brother. But, people want to know what Texas is up to. It's just like when Oregon, they had their media day in the Big Ten in Indianapolis a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you guys all saw this. Oregon, and they are so brilliant. They put a giant inflatable duck in the river outside of the stadium out there where the media day was, so that all anybody talked about was this giant inflatable Puddles duck that they had, and social media went crazy. It got posted everywhere. Every media opportunity, they spent less than, $30,000 to create a buzz around their brand, and they're going to continue to do that. And already you've seen how effective they can be with the recruiting classes that they're getting. They're already ranked ahead of us this fall, number 3 in the country. So all of a sudden Oregon has become, part of this discussion, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. And I think for us, from a marketing and communications standpoint, that's our, we got to be cautious about what they're doing. So anyway, One of the other classes that I pitched and started here in the fall was a class that was specifically designed to sort of bring athletes and students together in what we're kind of creating like little mock, you know, put four little teams. So I worked with the football program primarily, but also men's basketball. And I think we ended up with about 25 athlete students and about 75 regular students. No, I won't say regular, but students in this class. And we put together a class that was based on, look, we're not going to go out and get you NIL partnerships, but what we're going to try to do is give you, let you know what Nike and what any of these other Gatorade, what any brands are looking for when they're trying to choose an athlete, what their criteria is, and how your perception and your personality are going to help drive that opportunity. And, how you can create that or craft that, or, if you want to present a personality, if you want to be Joe Namath, that's a tougher road to go than if you want to be Eli Manning. And so, or Peyton Manning, if you want, how are you going to, what is your personal brand going to be about? And so we give them a lot of guidelines and rules there, but ultimately knowing that they're in a position, these are 17, 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old kids. They're just trying to make sure they get to football practice on time with somebody yelling and screaming at them. So, this class was designed to really sort of take a step back, say, here's a team that's going to work with you. I made all the students sign NDA agreements so that we were able to have a conversation with that each team. And then at the end of this class, we did an event at the Austin Boys and Girls Club, and brought all of the entire class over to visit all these great young kids that this is their only meal of the day is at the boys club. This is where they come. It's the safe place for them. And I think for our students and our athletes, it was a real eye-opening experience, because this was the first time in maybe a long time that they've seen, what, these kids, they're not impressed with my Lamborghini or my Porsche. They're just, happy to, get to say, oh my gosh, that's Quinn Ewers or that's Jonathan Brooks. And these are kids that are not going to football games on Saturday. They may not even be able to watch the games on TV, but for them, the experience was humbling and, sort of the experience was really incredible, I think, from both sides. The kids, just saw these are nice guys that have come out to spend time with us. I mean, every one of the players introduced themselves, because I'm not sure everybody knew who they were. And it was really fun experience for even our students in the class to sort of see, what, we're all here together to work together. And it was a really fun day. We spent the whole afternoon out there. If you looked in the parking lot, I had transportation arranged for the class, which was, I think we hit 100. And, you can imagine that we had a lot of folks that decided that they would drive their vehicles. It looked like, the board meeting at the Four Seasons Hotel with all the fancy four-wheel vehicles out in the parking lot. Our bus was not full, but everybody got there on time. And everybody was so engaged, and you can just sort of see the emotion and the warmth that sort of just naturally came out in this environment where, people didn't expect, that no one was out there trying to we said no autographs. Nobody's here to, try to take advantage of you. No one's here, to sort of, this is an environment that's going to be you're giving back your time, and not because you're going to play in the NFL next year or not. So it was really a joyful experience, I think, for the students. And we're bringing this back again this fall, brought this class. I'm only doing this class in the fall. I've got another good group coming in that this boys club event will be the second project we do in the same capacity. But you can just kind of see, how, special it was, how special it was, and really how, everybody just kind of became, there was no pretense. And I will tell you, from my standpoint, I talked to folks over at the athletic department. I said the most impressive student in this this day was Jonathan Brooks, and you can see him in this photo. He actually delayed his surgery on his right knee that he had torn the week before, so that he could be a part of this event. And if you don't know Jonathan, a really, humble origin guy, his NIL partnership, he's supporting, his family. He's doing a lot of things that you would never know if you didn't have spend time with some of these kids and sort of get to know them and get to know what their hopes are, their dreams, their fears. And, Jonathan said, look, I want to play in the NFL. I want to play because I want to be able to, make a difference for my family. It's like, if I get another injury, I'd love to stay. But for me, the best decision is, to see if I can't make it in the and get drafted. And, bless it, he made it happen. And, he's incredibly talented and gifted. But I will just tell you, this was a great day for us. And also some of the students, I've already got some of the students that were a part of this class. Got one that just took a job working in social media, running the social media for the Cleveland Cavaliers, Ainsley. She's doing a great job. She blossomed in this class, and part of the project she was able to use to help get herself get a job, in that. So for me, that was for me, that's what I'm trying to do, is give students, put them in a position where they can succeed. And if they want to be in sports and they think that this is an area they want to go into, that'd be a fantastic experience. So, anyway, that's kind of that class has been a real highlight, I think, so far. And everybody's like, oh, wow, how'd you come up with that? And it's like, well, talk to a lot of people, you figure out what's the best thing for these kids. We were able to make that Austin Boys and Girls Club that afternoon count towards their public service and their Texas One Fund commitment, because that, I don't know if you guys are aware how that's set up. The, as part of the money that comes in, those students are required to give back some community service hours. And, again, how do you monitor that? Who's watching that? You hope that it's being run like FedEx and not like the post office. But you just never know what's gonna, those are the kinds of things that takes a lot of, hard work, and people are gonna make mistakes. One of the first things we talk about in that class is I bring in one of my good friends from Raymond James and say, talk to these guys about 401ks, talk to them about their car, who's paying the insurance, is that considered income, all of those things that, even those that big names that have agents, they were clueless about a lot of the basic fundamentals of, their business, their brand. They are now professionals. And so that's some of the, we're going to catch up to that, and it's going to, we'll get there, but it's just a lot of, hard work and sort of discipline like that to make things happen. So anyway, I think that's kind of, for me, I'd say my basic sort of, rundown. The other thing I will tell you is that when I have I am very friendly to the athletes, because I know how much time that they put in outside of class. They don't have a lot of time to, on their own. If you're playing football at Texas, you have about 0 hours of free time that somebody doesn't want you or need you to be somewhere. You start the morning, on somebody else's calendar, and you end up over there in a study hall where they can monitor what you're doing and make sure you're in class and going to the classes and all those things. So the discipline and the hours that it takes to be an athlete in any sport is incredibly challenging. And, I've actually moved some of the times of my classes so that we could, create an environment, a place where, some of the football players could get to an afternoon class. They're not, if you set up a class at 10, they're not going to be there. They have practice. So, and that's their priority. So, but it's really been great for me to sort of, if I have a student, whatever sport they're in, I'll tell them, look, you will see me at your games. And so trust me, I've been to more women's basketball games in the last year and a half than I've been to in my entire life. I still know very little about soccer, but I've been to a lot of soccer games, and I'm really starting to try to figure the strategy out. But I need some help there. I have had a lot of the tennis team. I see almost all the tennis players in golf. Some of the kids that we have play golf here, both men and women, I'll see and try to go to their events. Tennis is a lot easier to get to than golf. But certainly My son played collegiate golf at Arizona State, so I know a little bit about what it's like to be a parent and the pressure that comes from, the expectations that all these kids have and the fear, of failure that can, think about at that age what you've got to deal with. And I will tell you one of my favorite stories. A couple of years ago, I had a young student in my big lecture hall for integrated communication for sports, and this student looked like 16 years old, maybe, comes in on crutches, uh, comes to the front row, sits down, introduces herself, and she's uh, has just come to Austin from Kiev in Ukraine, and ends up, 2 years later, Gabby Zelenova, part of an integral part of us winning a national championship here at Texas. Think about being 17 years old, never been, to Texas before, and suddenly you're, have all the pressure and all the things that are going on back home, and being here, being a part of this, and all the things that are going here. So when I have a student that comes in and says, my cat has I'm not going to be able to in class today because my cat has a, digestive disorder. I'm not going to be able to make it. It's like, okay, fine. You have an excuse, but just know that's a decision you've made. And, so I have a lot of respect for the time, effort, and hard work that these kids are putting in. And my goal is to give everybody an education, on the opportunities that might be out there in the sports side of things, and, both sides of it. And so that's what I'm trying to do. Obviously, the other big change that's happened is the Longhorn Network, as I mentioned earlier, is shut down. Bevo Productions is sort of more or less sort of morphed itself into our ESPN, Longhorn, production facility that is brand new. They just completed it down in Belmont. That's going to be, we're going to be producing what the Longhorn Network did with a lot more student opportunities. And so that's going to be exciting. So we've kind of done a lot of pivots here to, handle the changes that are coming, being a part of this new conference. Those of you who had season tickets last year probably got a notice that said where your seats were in the lower bowl may not be where they are this year. Obviously, the SEC has different rules about bringing, allowing the competition, that you have to make certain seating arrangements available to in that environment. And so that's going to change things a lot once we get Georgia and Mississippi State in here in Florida as well. So anyway, it's going to be fun. I mean, that's the other thing. This is, you just can't imagine, it's a great time in my mind to be from Texas, but there's a tremendous amount of pressure to, I feel, we've got to be the best, and we've got to give our students the best opportunities imaginable. We have to give them, and I try to bring in as many, guest lectures as I can from the industry. I had Seth Davis in here right after the March Madness this last spring. I bring in as many folks as I can. We bring in Vince Young. We bring in everybody. Houston Street, from when we talk about Moneyball, those folks I think play a big impact as well in some of these classes. So you can actually hear from some of the people we're talking about in the lectures. So firsthand. So I try to make it entertaining. I try to make sure the classes are, like I say, I feel like I'm putting on the Jimmy Kimmel show every Monday, Wednesday, and I've got to, because that's my job. I've got to make them, I can't make them come to class. I got to make them want to come to class. That's my philosophy. So, that's kind of, so far, people seem to be like the classes, and they haven't run me out of here yet. So, we'll see how it goes. Anyway, so I know you guys want to have some time for questions, so I'll shut up.
Please don't. We're going to ask you some questions.
All right, if that works. Anyway.
Okay.
I went over my time a little bit. I apologize.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So Roland asked this question. Can you share a little bit about how much donors might impact NIL deals and overall recruiting?
Well, I'm not seeing any of the money. It tremendously. And I think it's going, the way that the money's coming in is going to, this Texas One Fund that I know you guys are all aware of. And my understanding, and it used to be, I think the Longhorn Foundation was a place that people said, oh, I'm going to give to the Longhorn Foundation. You got some benefits from that. But to answer your question, Roland, I mean, it's going into a big giant pot. It's like the Salvation Army. You put your money in the pot, and then unless you have a specific, say, I want this money to go to the women's basketball program, or I specifically designate this fund for whoever it might be. It's your money, you can tell them where you want it to go. And from what I know, it's their responsibility to fulfill that, obligation to you. Some people just want to say, I'm going to stroke you a check. It's tax deductible. And you use it how you see fit, but we know that money is being used primarily to attract recruits. We know that a lot of these kids that are coming in, we're offering a package to athletes that says, here's what you can expect, financially, as far as the compensation might be. And that can vary from, player to player. And it's, here's, just like in the old days at Oklahoma, Big Red Motors, would always have all their football players on, they would give summer jobs that they never showed up for, and trucks that they, never paid for. Those things haven't really changed. That old donor handshake, $500 handshake, after a game, it's coming through a different place. It's being hypothetically monitored. But I guess what I'm saying is, if you want to support Texas athletics, I think the Texas One Fund is set up to provide that service, and do it, responsibly.
Yeah. Okay. This is a longer question. I'm gonna maybe ask it in two parts. So Randy asks, speaking to realignment, do you see the ACC falling apart and the SEC picking up SMU and some of the other bigger schools like Clemson? Let's just answer that question first.
Well, I think the short answer is we're not done. We are not done with the realignment. I think it's really clear, and it's being driven by money. But also like I said, my friends that are at Stanford, if you look at the Stanford football schedule, it's like the NFL. I think they play North Carolina State and Rutgers on successive weekends. And so you're not gonna fly that in, you're not gonna move that army from Palo Alto, East Coast, and you're gonna stay on the East Coast the way NFL teams that are, like the Patriots used to do when they'd play, San Francisco and the Rams in the same week, next back-to-back weeks. So those things, we don't know how that's going to impact all these educations. We don't know how that's going to change, what's happening, but we know that Florida State and Clemson are unhappy in that ACC arrangement. And that the ACC has an academic sort of persona that, is not going to allow, certain, obviously having Stanford or Cal anywhere is going to enhance your conference, but I don't know what's going to happen there. I mean, obviously North Carolina and Duke can kind of do whatever they want. But those are, if anybody's been up into Raleigh, into that region, those are, those institutions are incredibly beautiful, wonderful places, but mostly known for basketball, obviously. Although Mac Brown, of course, has done a pretty good job in North Carolina with the Tar Heels, but I don't think they're done there. I don't know what's going to happen. Some people have speculated, that we're going to see, 2 super conferences or 3 super conferences or whatever. So I think the SEC, for better or worse, is the only one, if you look at on a map, that is everything's contiguous. We're all together. Texas we're at the west of the region and Florida on the east. All those, it makes sense for us to be, in this partnership. And we all have this wild passion for football. That's the one thing that brings us all together, honestly. And so, I think that, Clemson has also been slow to embrace NIL, and you're starting to see them fall off. So the value of the Clemson brand is not what it was 2 or 3 years ago, although certainly the coach is a great coach. And I think Florida State, I think, would love to be, obviously they're going to play Florida every year, hypothetically, but so we know that there's going to be movement there. And I don't think Stanford and Cal, that's ever going to work. I felt awful. I used to do a lot of work for USC during the Pete Carroll era, and I love the Pac-12. I'm like Bill Walton. It's like, I love the Pac-12. I mean, I love UCLA. I love going to Pauley. I love their campus. I love that whole environment. So I really love the Pac-12, and it's sad to see what happened to it. But the reality is they were never they're as happy. A lot of the SC alums, they're Texas X's. They were still upset that they had let Arizona and Arizona State into the Pac-12. They're like, well, I can't believe we've lowered our standards by letting the Arizona schools in the Pac-12. So, people, jealousy and rivalry and ego all play a part of all these things. But we're in a business, it's money. To answer your question, it's about money. And if the opportunity is there, and if, an SMU that's going to take no money just so they don't get left out, or a Clemson or a Florida State that sees that the SEC cloud is going to be X amount, you're going to want to try to find a better place. And the ACC is sort of fallen off as far as the revenue sport. Football's driving everything, and revenue is what it is. That's where the money is. So I'll say we're not done. We are not done.
Okay, you answered the second part of his question a little bit as well, so it was good.
Good.
Azita says, this is not a question, but a compliment. It's so heartwarming to see the photos of UT athletes with young children and the community involvement and mentorship from the club. So she just wanted to say thank you for everything that you do. So congratulations on that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And it is, and those are the kinds of things that you don't see. You see the pictures of those guys driving, Porsches and doing stupid stuff in Bentleys, and at least that's what that attracts it. We tend to gravitate. It's like, as they say, we report when the plane crashes and not when it lands. This was a great place where it was the humility, and I think that's the biggest thing that I'm hoping that we'll get out of it. So thanks. We're going to continue it. And I think everybody in the end realizes that there's a tendency to sort of, we put all this pressure on all these kids. We turn them into stars. We were just talking before the class, the women's volleyball program just did this big, elaborate video shoot outside of Gregory 2 nights ago, where all the volleyball team were exiting limos. There's lights all over. There's students cheering them. They're in, it's like a premiere of a film. And so suddenly we're asking athletes to become film stars. We're telling them that you're to succeed, you can't just be the best wide receiver or the best setter or the best whatever libero that might be. You're also going to have to be able to, perform, in front of a crowd. You're also going to have to be comfortable in front of a crowd. You're going to have to do all of these things to succeed. And, I think we are prepping them for those things. I'm not doing that personally, but look at the budget that the athletics department has. We brought in Wasserman Group. We have William Morris working here in Austin with these athletes. I mean, we've got, we are a juggernaut. Before we had NIL, there were some programs out there in the country one of them was called Influencer and the other was called Leverage. And I think Influencer was started to help University of Kentucky basketball players who were one and dones. Kentucky would have their starting 5 team would be there 1 year. They would all get drafted. And so suddenly Kentucky realized, wait, these kids don't know how to address the media. They don't know what their brand is. They don't know to walk into a conference and smile and say hello and be, that they're being judged by the personality that they exude and that they represent our school. And so that was at the beginning, 8 years ago, before we had. Now these are in here. Our student athletes are, they're going to say, oh, today the guy from Leverage is going to come in and talk to you about how do you talk to the media? How do you say this? How do you address this? How do you do that? All of those things to, hopefully authentically, but these athletes are now have a lot of pressure, not just on the field, but off the field as well. And so that's very different.
So, Jason has a question. How is NIL considered payment to players and a scholarship isn't? So, and that might be something you may not be able to speak to, but that is a question that a lot of people ask. Yeah.
I think that's the fundamental, sort of issue that the NCAA, sort of said, look, we're providing them with this spectacular education, but that's not enough. At least that was the perception, at least when the rules made it such that. So are you denying a student the opportunity to earn an income? I think is probably the best argument maybe that Charlie Baker at the NCAA has sort of had to resolve, or at least the Supreme Court has resolved for him. But the thing is, I think that those athletes, the time and that they put in, if they needed to work an extra job, there's no way they could. So if Jonathan Brooks, wanted to work at Starbucks, there was no feasible way for him to do that because he had no time to do it. So I think that, we're acknowledging that. Are we making a profit off of is there a profit being made at DKR every Saturday? Yes, there is. And so I think in terms of how that money is distributed, I'm not in charge of, stroking the checks, but I think it's based on where we are today. This isn't 1953 when Bud Wilkinson was out recruiting, Air Force bases for the best players. This is 2024. And the bar is set at, we're athlete students, as part of that privilege, where there's also going to be, some compensation package that's going to vary from player to player, depending upon, how much they give back, what they do here. And if it doesn't work here, knowing that they're going to be playing at Oregon next fall, or, you're suddenly seeing how can the best in every sport, the best pitcher in college softball at Stanford is suddenly at Texas Tech. How does that happen? Unless something, there's been some kind of conference, it's like, did you go to Lubbock? Did you visit Lubbock before you left Palo Alto? I'm sorry, I don't want to offend anybody, but long story short, that there's an opportunity for income there. And honestly, a lot of these kids may not, they're not going to be coming out. I'm not answering your question. I think they should be compensated. I don't know what the numbers are. It's going to change, vary. Obviously, some like Arch are not going to take the money. They don't, they're going to donate it and do some of those things. Others that you may not know, or that actually their families do need the funds and are going to be a part of, that money isn't just going for, party, West Campus parties. It's going back to support some of their families and some of the other things. So I think it's fair.
Here's a good question that kind of encapsulates and uses a lot of the other questions that are being asked, and it's probably going to be our last one today. So, this person took your sports advertising course, loved it. And the question is, with conference realignment, transfer portal, and NIL funds, collegiate football is becoming more like the pros. However, it seems like it's a little less profitable for sports. Well, some sports are getting the short end of the stick. Do you think there could be an NCAA for sport-specific conferences? So that for volleyball, for tennis, for those guys?
And there already actually is, I believe.
Okay.
Yes, so that those sorts of situations do exist. Like right now, we just added beach volleyball this last year to Texas. And how did we do that? We went out and hired the best available coach in the country. We hired Stein Metzger from UCLA. We brought an entire team in of transfer portal players from all over. We got a really good beach volleyball team, but they're going to play in a conference. Not every school in the SEC has a beach volleyball team. So there will be unique situations like that. We're not in gymnastics for some odd reason. I imagine that will be soon. I can't imagine. We are out of compliance, by the way, in Title IX. I think we're 1 or 2 sports off right now. And I know Del Conte is working on it. But so to answer your question, yeah, there would be, there was always talk that Stanford and Cal would form, and, splinter off with Rice and Northwestern and, some of the more academic focused schools. But the reality is it's about revenue. We're already hearing rumblings that Stanford may, the traditional, you just came out of the Olympics. Schools like Stanford and Cal that have been traditionally schools that funded, that were all the athletes. I think Stanford led in the number of athletes at the Olympics and Cal was in the top 4. I think we had 30 athletes from UT that were at the Olympics. We're in the top 10. There's potential, what's going to happen there? Are we going to lose Olympic, the Olympics don't have the same kind of financial backing that have traditionally been carried by, big schools with big revenue like Texas. So, swimming, diving, some of those, those aren't, people aren't watching those sports, they only watch them once every 4 years. Track and field, I've heard rumors that could happen. So unless you've got some benevolent, Phil Knight that's going to, shepherd your program through hell or high water. And, that's, to me, the juggernaut is Oregon. I mean, those guys have all the money in the world. They have all the marketing, prowess and spectacular branding. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with in the next, 5 years. And the influence that you can have, generating Heisman trophies, I've worked on some projects where you're actually, working on the hype video for Heisman trophies and stuff. I mean, those are kinds of things you have to think about. Yeah, everything is a story, is a pitch, is a, what's it going to look like on Netflix? What's it going to look like on YouTube? And so it's the Wild West. I think it's going to be fun, exciting. And, the rules are going to be different for every, to fit the situation. That answers the question.
Yeah. Well, I think we're all just a little bit more excited about the upcoming season than we were before. So thank you very much for being with us today.
Well, good.
Yeah. And thanks to everyone for listening in today. I hope to see you around the Alumni Center this fall at our tailgates and at the September lunchtime lecture. It'll be hosted in person next month. Join us on Thursday, September 26th. To hear from Dr. James Henson. He's the director of UT's Texas Politics Project on the upcoming election. So it'll be a good one. Register now at texasexes.org/lunchtime lectures. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, guys. Hook 'em.